Okay. So, doubts from yesterday class, so that we quickly finish up this topic. Any doubt? Chat box enabled है निखिलेश? Chat box enabled है? ठीक है, चलो अच्छा है, नहीं आ गया. Sir, can you explain how suicide is same for both psychology and sociology? No, suicide is not same for psychologist and sociologist. Okay. If I'm a psychologist, I will study why someone commit suicide. Why a specific individual committed suicide. Okay. I'll talk about depression, frustration in his life, all those mental anxiety, okay, personality disorder, dual personality. I mean, this is the kind of explanation that as a psychologist I would be giving to that person who committed suicide. Okay, but on the other hand, to a sociologist, sociologist would never study why individual commits suicide. So sociologists would always study why suicide as a phenomena exists and why some group of people commit suicide more than any other group of people. For example, do you know one thing? If you look into statistics of suicide, okay, if you look into statistics of suicide all over the world, you will realize men commit more suicide than women. Okay. Tell me one thing, I'll ask you one question. Who do you think commit more suicide out of these two people? What do you think? Okay. Married people versus single. देखा अभी. Now this is what common sense is. Okay. According to common sense, what would people say? Maximum. I know some people would also say the other thing as well. नहीं, both नहीं होता है. I am simply asking one question. Which of them commit more suicide? Both कैसे हो सकता है? Question is, which of them commits more suicide than the other? Generally, people think that married people commit more suicide. But if you look into statistics, you will see that single people committed more suicide than married people. Now the question is why? This is what sociologists will study. Why marriage as a phenomena reduces the chances of someone committing suicide. Why someone who is single is vulnerable to suicidal tendencies. You know why? In marriage, what happens is you are not single. You have wife, you have kids. Okay. That means you as an individual is highly integrated with 2 or 3 other members as well. There is a force of integration. Okay. High force of integration is there. High force of integration. When you are single, nobody is bothered about you. Nobody is bothered about you. कहाँ जा रहे हो, क्या कर रहे हो, जिंदगी में कुछ है? Okay, it's all about you only. You have no one to ask you, where are you? Come back home. You have no one to tell you, no, this is not the place you are going to go. Okay, so you would not feel any restriction. You would feel that you have full freedom. Now you have full freedom, so you are equally vulnerable as well then in that case. Because out of this freedom only, you would start doing those things which will put you into depression. On the other hand, we have family, marriage system, which constrains individual, does not let individual do whatever he wants to do. Now that individual is responsible man, accountable to someone, so the chances of suicide goes down. So that is why single people commit more, suicide rate is higher. Suicide rate is high in single, and suicide rate is low among married people. Okay, so did as a sociologist, did I study that why individual committed suicide? I studied why suicide rate, the rate of suicide varies from one group, married group, to another group study. I'll ask you one more question. Because sociologists are not considered about concerned about individuals, they are concerned about groups. Who do you think would commit more suicide? Men versus women? Men. Okay, so did I talk about individual? No, I talked about men as a group, women as a group, not about Sushant Singh Rajput or some other actress. Okay, men. Okay, so this is the kind of study we do. Men would commit more suicide. Why? If you apply same reasoning, if men commit more suicide, okay, men suicide rate is high versus women, suicide rate is low. What do you think would be the reason for this? Because men are highly integrated or low integration? I want you to talk in very abstract form, because we have not yet studied Durkheim, who has conducted study on suicide. Okay, just like in married life, we have high integration. We have so many people who we are attached to. Okay, but if you talk about men alone, only men, married, unmarried does not matter, elderly, young does not matter, only men as a single group. Okay, so the problem is that Durkheim, when he found out data, he found that men are committing more suicide than women. Okay, what are the reasons behind it is something that we will get to know eventually when we will read Durkheim. Okay, he has conducted study across different groups. Like for example, Protestants versus Catholics, who committed more suicide? Okay, Protestants versus Catholics. Acha, tell me one more thing, one last question. Okay. India during peace times versus India during war times. For example, India versus Pakistan. Okay, like Kargil. The question is, in which of these phase suicide rate will increase? अभी देखना तुम क्या बोलोगे. In which phase of India do you think, during the phase of peace or during the phase of war, in which phase suicide rate increases? I mean, I'm talking about your opinion generally. What do you think? Okay, I'm not talking about what Durkheim found. Okay, so you are saying that during peace time, suicide rate will be high. Will be high during peace times. High or low? What do you think? High. High. Very good. Yes, this is the right answer. During peace times, suicide rate increase, and during war times, suicide rate reduces. Now, the question is how? वॉर चल रही है, सुसाइड रेट भी बढ़ सकते हैं, लोग परेशान हो जाएंगे. बट इन पीस टाइम्स सुसाइड रेट इज इंक्रीजिंग. दिस इज व्हाट Durkheim found. Now, why does it happen? See what happens when you know that India is going on war against Pakistan. What will you guys do? The nationalism, your nationalism, the spirit of nationalism will be so high. Every day you will be watching live the footage of war. Okay, सब भीड़, सब दोस्त बन जाएंगे उस टाइम. चाय वाला आ जाएगा वहां पे, चाय की दुकान, चाय पिलाओ, चलो ठीक है, देखें जरा क्या चल रहा है. So you know the spirit of nationalism will be so strong during those times. All of us will forget our internal differences. We will become friends because we have found one common enemy, Pakistan. So all of us become friends. And when all of us have become friends, spirit of nationalism is so high. That means the integration force amongst us is also very high. And when integration force is high, suicide rate falls down. Okay, this is the kind of study that Durkheim did. Okay, but I don't want to go into it because we are yet to read Durkheim. Okay, anyhow. Clear, Keegan? Do you think psychologists will be studying suicide like this? He cannot. He cannot. He talks about individual suicide only. Anyhow, so let us now quickly jump to sociology versus history. Okay, and before that, one more thing that I want to ask is, do you think that individual exists? Like all of us have fundamental rights. Okay, we as an individual exercise our fundamental rights, right? This is what we read in polity also, individual rights. But do you think individual exists? You would say, yes, I am existing right now, I am watching you, so I exist. Individual do not exist. Individual do not exist. Okay, only roles exist. You are not individual right now, you are student. And as a student, you know your behavior would be very different. So your individualism is lost. You are student. Now suppose after the class, you go out with your friends, hang out, have a coffee. Then again, also, you are not individual, you are in a role of friend. Right now, you are in a role of student. After the class, you will be in the role of friend. And after finishing that tour, ठीक है, दोस्तों के साथ घूम फिर लिया, you will go back to home and then you will be in the role of son or daughter. When you go to theater, you will be in the role of audience. You have so many roles. Then where is the individual? And in each role you perform different behavior, you manifest different behavior. So where is the individual? Individual does not exist, only roles exist. Okay. Now, what happens is you are sitting in your home. Okay, this is in continuation to social psycho only just one fact I'm going to tell you last. Okay, you are sitting in a home, you are feeling very bored. Okay, your friend will call you, aja. Okay, so you will put on the clothes according to the destination that you guys have planned to go to. Okay, and then the fun begins. You roam around the city and then come home. Now, when you were sitting idle at home, you were getting bored. That was your backstage. You were in the backstage. Just like in theater, we have two stages, front stage, backstage. And what happens in the backstage? You prepare for the front stage. ठीक है, पीछे जाके हम डायलॉग रखते हैं, ये बोलना है, ये बोलना है, ये बोलना है. Okay, and then we look at our face in the mirror. Okay, ये दिख रहा हूँ ऐसे ऐसे ऐसे. So this is our backstage preparation. And then finally someone would push you to the front stage. Okay, जाओ अब चलो हो गया. फिर हम एक्टिंग शुरू करते हैं. Now your friend called you, you met him, and then you or how's been beta bahut time ho gaya, it's been long time, you did not call me for so long, suddenly now you are remembering me, huh? So this is front stage going on, front stage going on. And then your mother will call you, where are you? Another front stage performance. Coming home, on the way, you have just met your friend going to going to market. Your mother is calling, I'm on the way to home. Okay, so we always do acting, always do. You are acting out with your friend, sounding cool, acting out with your mother. Okay, so every time we act, this is known as impression management. And you act in a context, your behavior is shaped by your roles. So as an individual you do not exist, only roles exist. Okay, fine. So this was all about sociology versus psychology. Now let us talk about some serious stuff. Okay, sociology versus history. Sociology versus history. Don't worry about dictation, everything you will get in the notes only. Okay. Sociology versus history. Now, First understanding that we have about history is that history is very vast. Generally, as an individual, as a student, we think like this: history is very vast, ancient, modern, world, medieval, art and culture. Okay, and sociology is relatively small. Okay, this is what we think of these subjects as. Okay, as a historian, what do you do exactly? You simply try to study the past or the contemporary past of the societies. Okay, Greek Empire, Roman Empire, French society, American society, Chinese society, Indian society. You study their past, ancient past, medieval past, the modern past. Okay, this is how, as a historian, you conduct your studies. Timeline, right? Okay, chronology. So, one thing is very clear. One thing is very clear and very easy to write. That is, historian studies past in a chronological fashion. Historian studies past of a society, of course, in a chronological fashion. This is what historian does generally. Okay, and sociology, on the other hand, what it does, sociologist study modern societies and the forms of relationship and the structures. Modern society, forms of relationship and structures. Historian will not study religion. Historian do not study religion, origin of religion. That is another department called as theology. Okay. Historian do not study origin of family or the evolution in family. Right? Historian do not study evolution of economy. Okay. Although we have economic historians as well. Okay, but they do not study economy the way a sociologist would study. Okay. This is very general distinction between these two. Very general. Now, let us come to specific details. Generally, it is believed that history is based on facts. History is based on raw facts, figures, okay, or documents, okay, or texts, chronological text, okay. This is what we generally believe. It is based on raw facts, figures, documents, right? Now, here comes the biggest challenge. Facts do not speak for themselves. As a historian, if I'm looking at a fact, unconsciously I will start studying that fact with my existing knowledge that I already have. Okay, with already existing knowledge that I have, Then I study fact. Okay. For example, French Revolution you guys have studied, right? How does Marx or Marxist scholars look at French Revolution? They call it bourgeois revolution. But when you read history, you never read that it was termed as bourgeois revolution. You simply read that third estate overthrew first and second estate, established national assembly, which came up with declaration of rights, all these things. You never read it was a bourgeois revolution. Now, those scholars who studied this fact called as French Revolution, it is a fact, it happened definitely. But the interpretation of the people who are studying those facts vary. Okay, so I'm now going to give you example on French Revolution first, and then I will come to our Indian nationalist struggles, all those things. Okay, then I'll tell you how sociologists study those struggles, how historian will study those struggles. Is there any convergence between these two? Okay, okay. So what we have read so far is these two, and then history is based on raw facts, figures, documents. Okay. However, write down here one line. However, historiography, historiography, historiography is all about, however, historiography is all about theoretical perspectives, theoretical perspectives and ideologies. Theoretical perspectives and ideologies of the historians influencing the facts. Theoretical perspectives and ideologies of the historians influencing the facts. Okay. Now comes the next question. What are those theoretical perspectives and ideologies which influence those historians? I started with one example called as fact, that is French Revolution, and then I gave one theoretical perspective, Marxist perspective of French Revolution. So this is Marxist historiography of French Revolution. This is Marxist historiography of the French Revolution. Okay. So now I'm focusing on this only. Once you have understood this point, then all the difference between sociology and history is over. Okay, so I'll focus only on this now for the time being. Let us forget everything else. The event before me is French Revolution. And I have multiple perspectives to study French Revolution. One is Marxist historiography. Second is revisionist historiography. Okay. I can also have feminist historiography. Before explaining you this much, all these things, okay, I'll ask all you guys one very basic thing, and then you will understand what are these historiography. Okay. All you guys are reading Bipin Chandra or Spectrum, whatever that may be. Okay. For your modern history. Right? And all you guys agree that it is purely factual. Okay. History is all about facts. But when you read the modern history from Bipin Chandra or from Spectrum, you will realize one thing very easily, that it seems that all the nationalist struggle that we had from 1857 till 1947, it was all about men. You will find women absent in the history. All the contribution that women did is literally absent. Only one or two or three or four women are highlighted. The masses, the women masses are absent. Okay, the contribution they did is absent. And you will when you read history like this, you read 100 years of history and women were absent, you would always praise Gandhi, Patel, Ambedkar, and women will never come to your head. Okay, you have father of nation, you do not have mother of nation. Okay, you have father of nation without mother. So feminist historiography looks at any event through feminist perspective. I'm giving you one example. All of you have read Gandhi and Dandi March, the Salt March that he took, right? But do you know one thing? And you do not read this in the old Bipin Chandra or the new Spectrum. You will read this fact which I'm going to tell you in new NCERT. Okay. Gandhi was against the participation of women in the Salt March. Gandhi never supported participation of women in the Salt March. Yes, Shubham. So, but we read in Bipin Chandra that we had women during Salt March. But on whose insistence, on whose request, Gandhi allowed women to participate? हाँ, बिल्कुल सही, Sarojini Naidu. On the request of Sarojini Naidu, women were allowed to participate in the Salt March. Now, there can be many reasons behind Gandhi not letting women to participate in the national movement, and there are many different perspectives on this also. There is no fact. You will read one perspective, actually Gandhi never wanted the lathi charge on the women, so that is why he said, please stay at home, I don't want you guys to get hurt. This is one perspective. Second perspective, you will read that Gandhi was highly patriarchal. He thought women are very weak figures. If Britishers would see me with women, they will not take me seriously. This is another perspective. You are not in a position to say which is right, which is wrong. History is gone. Gandhi is dead. You cannot ask him, why did you not let women participate? So when history is over, historiography starts. Why happened whatever happened? Okay. Now, as far as French Revolution is concerned, Marxist historiographers, for example, there is one Marxist historiographer, Lefebvre. Lefebvre. You may also write the name of Marx himself. Lefebvre calls French Revolution as bourgeois revolution, just like Marx. And then comes, Acha, the question is why bourgeois revolution? Because First, it should be clear to us why it was called as bourgeois revolution. Although we read history like this, that third estate got power, came forward with National Assembly and charter, all those things, okay, influenced by Enlightenment ideas. But the fact is, who actually came to power were the bourgeoisie, the industrial class. And the fact is that the structure of French society before revolution and after revolution, you will come to realize that it was actually conflict between two classes. One was industrial class in the third estate, the merchant class, versus the nobility, the king, and the king versus businessman. This is what the class conflict was at that point of time. And it was actually, if you have read French Revolution in detail, okay, you will see one personality coming in the latter stages, Robespierre. Okay, Robespierre. Why Robespierre came, what was his contribution? You will come to realize that when industrial classes overthrew the nobility classes, this is what the Marxist interpretation is. Okay, Marxist, industrial classes overthrowing the nobility classes, and then finally France is leaning towards right. Robespierre comes in and makes sure that working class is not absent only. But see, the problem is, this is what the French society was. First, second, third estate. The third estate, as you guys know very well, was consisting of bourgeoisie. This is something that I've already told you. And bourgeoisie was the middle class. Along with bourgeoisie, we had peasants or farmers, whatever you may call them, lawyers, professionals, okay, bankers, bank workers, okay. This was what the third estate was. Now, when French Revolution happened, what happened? The bourgeoisie got in conflict with the second estate. So basically, when bourgeoisie got in conflict with second estate, at the end of the day, it was actually bourgeois society now. Why? Because these people had now full control over the politics. These people had full control over law. Generally, we read that, the peasants came in, no, how could peasants make laws for themselves? In the nationalist movement, we often read that nationalist movement was led by Gandhi, Patel. There is always one section, the elite section, that leads the masses. French society was no exception in that case. Masses have no consciousness. They always need few elites to lead them. And those elites, the role of that elite was played by bourgeoisie. They captured the society. Now, but at the surface, it seems that all the people got freedom. One elite being replaced by another elite. Nothing else happened. Okay. So this is why. And it is regarded as acceptable. It is acceptable one. Okay. Bourgeois revolution. It was not the proletariats coming to power. It was the bourgeoisie, the elites coming to power. Okay. The second interpretation to French Revolution is revisionist. Revisionist historiography. And What is the meaning of revisionism? Revisionism simply means rejecting something that is the dominant one and coming forward with alternative. So what did revisionists revise? They revised Marxist historiography. Okay, revisionist historiographers revised Marxist historiography. They challenged it. They said it was not bourgeois revolution. Okay, Lefebvre and Marx, both you guys are stupid. It was not bourgeois revolution. Why it was not bourgeois revolution? Because the majority were lawyers, educated, already educated people. They were professionals, state professionals, bankers, employees. They do not need industrial class to lead them. They are already educated. They were enough conscious. Now the fact is, can you prove this revisionist historiography wrong? No, you cannot. You cannot go back to those times and ask people who led you. Please tell me, दिमाग खराब हो गया हमारा ये पढ़ पढ़ के. You cannot ask them. So when history is over, historiography comes to haunt you. Okay, you never get to know what was the reality. There is one scholar in revisionist historiography. His name is Coban. Coban. What did Coban do? He simply rejected Marxist historiography. Okay, because he believed maximum were non-bourgeois. Okay. There is one more theoretical perspective to French Revolution. Okay. They say that French Revolution was the conspiracy of the intellectuals. It was the conspiracy of the Enlightenment intellectuals. They conspired against the church class, the priestly class. So now who is right? That is why people say read from NCERT. At least it is official. We do not know what is right or what is wrong. And we should not even say what is right or what is wrong. We should read what is accepted as official. That may be wrong, but that may be right. But that is official at least. Okay. Anyhow, now coming to some event from India. I'm explaining this only. Once you are done with this, everything is over in sociology versus history. You will understand what do you have to write, what you don't have to write. Okay, basically what I'm saying is, the idea is that history projects itself as based on facts, but it is not like that. Historian is not factual. History may be. Historian is a human being, and every historian is coming from specific tradition of knowledge. He may be a Marxist historian. He may be a right-wing historian. He may be, or she may be, a feminist historian. You guys must have heard a lot about these names like Irfan Habib on modern history, Sumit Sarkar, Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, Bipin Chandra. You will see that all these people have written on history, but their perspectives differ a lot. Okay, it's all about historiography. Now let me give you one more example. Champaran Satyagraha. Is there anyone who has not read Champaran Satyagraha? Anyone? Don't feel shy about it. Okay, it's very okay if you have not read. Okay. All of us are beginners here. Adarsh Gupta, you have not read, it's okay. Harshvardhan, okay, that's okay. Yashi, that's okay. Koi baat nahi, okay. I'll tell you the basic idea of Champaran Satyagraha, okay, and then you will come to know how historians studies those events, and what kind of historians study the same event differently. In very simple explanation, I can tell you one thing. Champaran Satyagraha, Champaran is basically a district in Bihar. Okay. District or village, I don't really understand this or know this. Okay. But it is in Bihar. Now, these were the people, peasants. There were some people, peasants in Champaran, who were planting indigo. They were involved in indigo plantation. What is indigo? You call it as Neil. Neil. Indigo. Some farmers or peasants, let us talk about peasants, not farmers, okay. Some peasants were involved in indigo plantation. अच्छा खासा सब चल रहा था, बढ़िया, okay. But the problem is, the amount of produce that was to be shared with the Britishers. Okay, first of all, they did not want it to plant all by themselves. Okay, forcefully they were planting indigo. Otherwise, they would have produced something else. Indigo was very commercial crop. Okay, it is a cash crop. Okay, it gives color or dyes to the textile. So it is a cash crop. So it has its commercial interest as well. So Britishers wanted these people to plant indigo for them. Okay, we will plant indigo for you. But then you are also taking 65% share or approximately 2/3 of revenue from us. Okay, that is not fair, na? We are planting something according to your wish, and then you are taking the major pie. Okay, Gandhi came in. This is the simple story. Gandhi came in and he said, don't worry, I will help you guys. I will help you get fair share, okay, from the Britishers. Okay. Now, what did Gandhi do? Gandhi led Champaran Satyagraha. It is considered as the first civil disobedience movement. Because Gandhi had told the peasants not to share anything with the Britishers, not to give any kind of produce to the Britishers, resist them, do not plant any indigo. Okay, participate with me, show some resistance to the Britishers. Okay, let us take some time off. They will eventually get to know how important you guys are. Without you, they would not have gotten their produce, and they are not sharing anything with you guys. They will realize it automatically. Okay. Now, when you read this thing from history book, Gandhi comes out as a hero, right? Gandhi comes out as a hero to the peasants. Gandhi comes out as a hero to the peasants. Now, read the same event from some other perspective, you will come to know what I'm going to talk about now. Do you know this? The peasants चंपारण सत्याग्रह। One version you have already read, version 1. That is one version. Second version of the same Champaran. Gandhi leading peasants, right? Right. The perspective is like this. When upper caste leads lower caste, what happens? It is actually making the caste consciousness more and more stronger, and it is maintaining the structure of caste, because Gandhi was an upper caste man, and not just upper caste man, he was upper caste, western educated, man leading lower caste non-educated men. What does it show? What does it show to you? It shows that lower caste people always need upper caste to lead them. And when we call it as the first satyagraha, the first civil disobedience, we celebrate the caste structure unconsciously. We celebrate upper caste leading the lower caste. And when India gets independence at the end of the day in 1947, what happens? In the assembly, you see upper caste people making all the kinds of laws. Ambedkar was the sole exception. That is why he is popular, most popular. I don't know how many of you know this. If you look into bureaucracy, IAS, IPS, IRS, if you look into Rajya Sabha, if you look into Lok Sabha, you will see majority of them being upper caste men only till date. Indian Administrative Services is called as Indian Brahminical Services by a scholar known as Kancha Ilaya. And do you know why? Because if you come out with the data of those people who have made it through, you will see that most of them are Pandey, Mishra, all those. You will come out with this data, you will eventually get to know why it is Indian Brahminical Services. Out of 700, you will find 400 of them upper caste men. Not even lower caste men or lower caste women or upper caste women. Upper caste men is one category that is hoarding all the opportunities. The same is in bureaucracy, the same is in parliament, in Rajya Sabha. The nominees, in Rajya Sabha, there is a concept of nominations. Look at the profile of those nominees. There is one data which got released in Indian Express last year, which told us that 80% of nominees were upper caste men. Anyhow, so what does it show? It shows vertical mobilization. One upper caste man mobilizing lower caste peasants. This is vertical mobilization. But in history, we do not have all the movements like this. The people from South India know this very well. They had self-respect movement. Self-respect movement. Can anybody tell me the name of the leader of the self-respect movement, and what was self-respect movement all about? Periyar, very good. And who was Periyar? He belonged to lower caste. He was a lower caste man. And when self-respect movement happened, it was a movement by Periyar, who was a lower caste man, who believed we, lower caste people, also have our self-respect. Okay, why should we not enter into temples? Why should we accept orthodox Hinduism caste structure? And when lower caste men, lower caste man mobilized, lower caste men, here it is upper caste Gandhi, Western educated, leading lower caste man, it is vertical mobilization. When lower caste himself mobilizes the lower caste, it is called as horizontal mobilization. Now, I will ask you two questions. Why did I teach you these things about? Okay. First, would you expect historian to tell you these things? Upper caste men, modern educated, leading lower caste men, and this has legitimized why upper caste men should be ruling India always because they were the first ones to lead. You will always find this as a perspective. As a perspective. And what kind of perspective is this? Do you know? This is Marxist perspective. Why Marxist perspective? Upper caste men are not bourgeois, but they are the dominant sections. Marxist is not about bourgeois proletariat always. It is always about one dominant section, whether it may be upper caste or whether it may be upper class. Okay, only these terms vary, but there is always one dominant section which secure its own interest. Okay, which secures its own interest at the cost of masses. So this is how a sociological literature or a historiography is nothing but different theoretical perspectives or ideologies. But where are these perspectives, ideologies coming from? Sociological literature only. Feminism. Where did feminism come from? French Revolution, Mary Wollstonecraft. And there comes sociology out of it. So sociology has given all these things to us. Feminism, Marxism, functionalism. These are theoretical perspectives. And when historians apply these perspectives and study history, they come out with different details. Okay. When historian will write about India's freedom of struggle, struggle for freedom, you will eventually see colonialism got over, we got our own constitution. But when you talk about historiography, you will come out with other finding and you will see we were ruled by colonizers at one point of time. Today we are again ruled by colonizers only. At one point of time we were ruled by the British men. Today we are ruled by upper caste men. Nothing has changed. External colonialism has been replaced by internal colonialism. Women are still not free. The women's freedom movement is still going on. Okay, women's freedom, Dalits are still not free. Every day you read about one Dalit man being harassed in university or murdered or killed. Rohit Vemula case, you must have heard about. IIT Kharagpur case that recently happened. Dalit movement is still there. Tribal movement is still there. And also, these are the questions that uh, are being raised by historiographers who are coming from different theoretical perspectives. Okay, you would not find these things in factual history book, Bipin Chandra class 12. That is purely for specific section. Okay. Anyhow, what was I going to tell you? Yes. So what you have to do is now history versus sociology. I was talking about something here that was written here. So parallelly, you will write one point here. Write down. All these theoretical perspectives, like feminism, Marxism, subaltern, feminism, comma, Marxism, comma, subaltern. I'll explain you the meaning of it. Feminism, Marxism, subaltern, comma, nationalist, comma, orientalist, comma, colonialist, nationalist, orientalist, colonialist. I forgot the first line. Where did I start from? Can someone write? What did I say before feminism, Marxism, so that I could complete the sentence? All these theoretical perspectives like feminism, Marxism, subaltern, nationalist, orientalist, colonialist, help us study the same factual history. Help us study the same factual history with an interpretation. With an interpretation. It is rightly said, full stop के बाद, it is rightly said, facts do not speak for themselves. You need a theoretical perspective to speak on the behalf of facts. You need theoretical perspective to speak on the behalf of facts. Last line, all these theoretical perspectives are gift of sociology to the writings of history. All these perspectives are gift of sociology to the writings of history. To the writings of history. Okay. Now some of you may be wondering, what is subaltern? What is nationalist? What is orientalist? What is colonialist? All these are historiographies. All these are historiography in the sense theoretical perspectives on the same history that you have read. And broadly, I will suggest you what is the meaning of these terms. Broadly, if you read history through the lens of colonialist, the people who have written history of India, the people, if they are Britishers, specifically people like James Mill. James Mill. He was actually the first modern historian of British India. He is the first one to write 3 volumes on Indian history. You know, that person, who is that person who has classified Indian history into ancient, medieval, modern? Who was that first person? It was James Mill. James Mill was the first person to classify India into Hindu rule, Mughal rule, British rule. Ancient, medieval. This is the classification of Indian history. You cannot see such classification in of any such other society. You would not find any other society being theorized historically like this. Okay. And colonialist historiography, they always undermine Indian culture. When you read Indian society from a book written by colonialist historiography, I'm not saying that all Britishers are bad. Okay, so they would always speak badly only. No, it is not like that. Okay. But the initial colonialists were very much against the culture, and they believed that these people need us to rule them, to civilize them. This is white man's burden. So we, the Indians, were burdened to them. So they thought that we should be civilizing these people first. It is our duty. Colonialist historiography. Okay. Orientalist historiography. Have you heard about scholars like William James, Max Muller? Okay. These were those people who were in love with Indian culture. They were in love. William James even established Asiatic Society to study Indian culture. He was so much fond of Indian culture. Orientalists. Orientalists are amongst the colonial people only who are oriented towards us. They have soft orientation towards us. Okay. So you will see when you read colonialist history of India and Orientalist history of India, you will never come up with objective fact. You will only come up with perspectives. One, people who are writing very good about Indian culture. Second, who are hating Indian culture. Okay, so you will never come up with objective reality. Nationalists are those people like Nehru, discovery of India. He would always praise showers on Indian culture, always. He would talk about ancient India, the glory that we had, the times of Akbar, Buddha. This is the land that had produced so great men. Okay, you would never find Nehru criticizing India. This is nationalist historiography. Okay, subaltern historiography. Have you guys ever read any work by Arundhati Roy? Arundhati Roy. He is also a very famous intellectual, feminist scholar. Everything that you can think of. Have you guys read any work by Mulk Raj Anand? I'm not talking about the major historians or sociologists of subaltern like Ranjit Guha, all those people. First of all, let me explain to you the meaning of subaltern. Subaltern literally stands for bottom most rank. Bottom most ranks. This is the meaning of subaltern. Yes, Shahid Amin. Very good, Nutan Chaurasia. Very good. I'll explain Shahid Amin also. Very famous historian he was. He is, I mean, he's still alive. Shahid Amin. Bottommost ranks. Now, what is the meaning of subaltern perspective to history? When that means if you read any book written by these people, or Shahid Amin, or Ranjit Guha, or David Hardy Men, okay, or Irfan Habib, you will always find them talking about one specific group a lot. For example, Mulk Raj Anand, he will talk about Dalits, Shudras, who were absent in the historiography of mainstream Indian society's history. Okay, you will never read in the Indian history how did tribals perceive of Gandhi as, how did Dalits perceive of Gandhi as. This is not what we read in the standard books. What was Gandhi to Dalits? Was he also God to him, just like to any other mass? Was he also like Mahatma to the Dalits? Or was Ambedkar more Mahatma? You do not read these things. You read a very plain history, and when you read this history, you are actually internalizing a dominant notion or a dominant picture of history which do not want you to understand the history of the masses. What they felt about those leaders is something from those mainstream texts, something missing. What these masses felt about these leaders, you would never get to know this. What these leaders did to the masses, you will always find. Okay, so write down one line on against subaltern, just one line. Subaltern perspective to history. Yes, Mulk Raj Anand, untouchable. Yes. Subaltern perspective to history is a challenge to the mainstream history. Is a challenge to the mainstream history. Mainstream history. Is a challenge to mainstream history. And it uncovers the history of the oppressed sections of society. It uncovers history of the oppressed section of society. Like tribals, women, Dalits, etc. etc. comma, which is generally absent in the classical historiography. Which is generally absent in the classical historiography. For example, and subaltern perspective, if I'm talking about, just to give you one example, there are many scholars under subaltern. Okay, there is one man, Shahid Amin. Okay, someone that Nutan also talked about right now, Shahid Amin. You know what was the main area of interest to that historian, Shahid Amin? He wanted to understand the making of Mahatma. How did and when did Gandhi become Mahatma? You would not read this in the spectrum or class 12th NCERT. You know only one thing. Rabindranath Tagore gave the title of Mahatma to Gandhi. But this is also challenged. Shahid Amin has worked in the district of Gorakhpur. He is one historian. He went to the district of Gorakhpur. He not literally went to the district, but he tried to uncover all the documents of those times, 1921, 22. Okay. And he came up with many newspapers of those times where it was written that Gandhi came here. He was looking like a god to all of us. For the first time, 2.2 lakh people of us assembled to visit one man to see how he looks like. We have heard a lot about him. In those times, we did not have social media now. So obviously, you will see many writers writing on newspapers like this about one man who everybody has listened a lot about. Okay, when he descended to Gorakhpur, he looked like heavenly something. This is the kind of presentation that journalists were portraying of Gandhi in those times. And Shahid Amin is trying to read all these newspapers. And Shahid Amin believes that the charisma that Gandhi had as an individual, charisma, this charisma actually made people believe that he is a religious preacher. He has come directly from heaven to enlighten them. This was the kind of charisma that he had. And this charisma actually bestowed the title of Mahatma to him. People called him Mahatma, religious. It was actually the people who called him this, not any Rabindranath Tagore. In fact, Gujarat government in 2017 only challenged this notion. And Gujarat government believed Saurashtra journalist, unknown journalist from Saurashtra, has given this title to Gandhi. You would never ever come to realize any objective fact behind any reality that you read in history. Okay, it's all about perspectives, 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 nothing else. Okay, what we call as objective is nothing but a dominant perspective. Okay, chalo, enough of history. Enough of history. As far as Mulk Raj Anand is concerned, he is one writer in whose writing he has written two very famous books. One is Coolie, Coolie जो होते हैं train वाले. Second is Untouchables. In both the books, you will find him narrating about the stories of Shudras, Shudra men. Okay, I'm sure you must have heard about R.K. Lakshman. R.K. Narayan, sorry, R.K. Narayan. R.K. Narayan always talks about stories. Okay, what kind of India we had. Okay, the stories वो होती है, मतलब उस टाइम की भी उस टाइम की भी. हाँ, yes, क्या नाम था उसका? मोगली डेज नहीं, उसका नाम कुछ और था. Malgudi days, yes, Malgudi days. Okay, so you would not find in the writings of R.K. Narayan people like Gandhi, Patel. It is about masses, what people were doing. So Mulk Raj Anand is also doing similar thing. He is talking about Dalits, Shudras, how their life is as a coolie, as a cobbler. Okay, talking about their lives. Arundhati Roy has written one book, God of Small Things. God of Small Things. There she talks about women, Shudras, again, Dalits. God of small things. Okay, small things in the sense these people who are generally ignored. Okay. He is trying to highlight the subalternity of these people. Their everyday life has become the mainstream document to someone is actually a big thing. Anyone can write about Gandhi. Ramchandra Guha has written 2 books on Gandhi. He's a Brahmin Pandit. Upper caste man. Okay. Who would write about lower caste people and marginalized sections? Someone from that area only would have to rise up to talk about them. Okay. So this was what did exactly you get to learn from this story? The moral of the story is that history is something that seems to be factual, but all the facts that we consider are nothing but narrative only. They are narrative. And when narrative comes in, facts are gone. Therefore, write down one line. Therefore, therefore, and where do you write this line? अच्छा अभी chaotic हो जाएगा, confusion कहाँ लिखेंगे? मतलब कहाँ? जो दो कॉलम्स बने हैं अभी तक के, ठीक है, इन कॉलम के ठीक बीच में ऐसा एक डिब्बा बना लो अभी तक के लिए. Okay, we have covered 2 points, and after 2 points we have to make one box like this, and then we will continue with third point. Sociology is definitely rootless without history. Sociology is definitely rootless without history. Okay, comma, but history is fruitless without sociology. History is fruitless without sociology. Okay. What is the meaning of this line? You could not have been talking about Champaran Satyagraha as a sociologist if Champaran Satyagraha did not happen. So sociology is rootless, of course, without history, and more rootless when you know that sociology came as a child of French Revolution. So the origin of sociology also lies in the history. So these are not polar opposites. If French Revolution had not happened, sociology would not have been there. Okay. Sociology is like a small child to the great historical events like Industrial Revolution and French Revolution. Okay. So definitely sociology is rootless without those historical periods. But history in itself is fruitless without sociology, because sociology has given us so many perspectives which can help us understand history through multiple narratives, through multiple colors. Okay. Understood yahan tak? Then only I will proceed. Yes, yes. Okay. ठीक है, ठीक है. So the last point that you are going to write on history versus sociology. As a student of history, write down third point. As a student of history, here you have to write third point. As a student of history, we study Russian Revolution, French Revolution, American Revolution, and Chinese Revolution. As a student of history, we study Russian, French, Chinese, American Revolution. Right? Okay. All those who have not studied these revolutions, don't worry. आपके वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री के टीचर जरूर पढ़ाएंगे आपको. Okay. And then you will have to ask your world history teacher one question, ठीक है, on my behalf. Okay. When you read Russian Revolution, Chinese, American, and French Revolution, you always talk about differences. How Chinese Revolution was different from American was different from French was different from Russian. A sociologist, as you know, would study school factory, but then he would study for similarities between these seemingly different institutions. Remember, in Sociology versus Common Sense, and also before that I told you that we employ comparative method, but we look out for a pattern. Something seems to be very different one from one another, but there has to be a pattern. There is a pattern. Okay, so here in the third point, you will write historian studies differences in these revolutions. Historian studies differences between these revolutions. Here you will write, however, sociologists would find similarities even in these seemingly different revolutions. Sociologists would find similarities even in these seemingly different revolutions. Sociologists would find similarities even in these seemingly different revolutions. Okay. Now, can someone tell me any similarity between these revolutions? I know it's very difficult to recall all the information from all those revolutions, but let us talk about only two. Can anybody tell me the similarity, any kind of similarity between French and American Revolution? As a sociologist, if you see, Enlightenment, though it was a phase, Enlightenment, power struggle, yes, very good. Vijay, yes, very good, Vijay. Now you are talking like sociologist, almost there. Not exact, but yes, almost there. Capitalism, Khan Pasha, change the existing order, replace new. Very good, Imran. Very good. Oppression of masses, almost there, Shivam. Kishore Kumar, mobilizing the masses, almost there. Overthrowing of ruling class, almost there. Saurabh, nice. Pranshu, peasants versus upper class, almost there. And I'll tell you something which is more common than these things. Bikram Mandal, lower struggle to find their rights. Okay. Kanish Kumar, market rule, colonial control expansion. Riya Jain, no representation without taxation. Taniksh, new social order. Shubhangi, dominance over others. Yes, that is there. Kanish Kumar, modernity. Christie, monarchy to parliament. ठीक है. There is one scholar. Her name is Heda Skocpol. Heda Skocpol. She has written one book. The name of her book is States and Social Revolutions. States and Social Revolutions. In her book, States and Social Revolution, she writes, write down. In her book, she writes, there is a pattern in all these revolutions. There is a pattern in all these revolutions. And that is first point. First point. Incapacitation. capacitation of old regime. Incapacitation of old regime. Okay, it's not about this only, this is very common thing. Okay, incapacitation of old regime is something which is very clear in all these revolutions. People are not happy with the existing order. That is why revolution happened. So old regime had become incapacitative, incapacitation of old regime. Okay, but the common factor, the main major common factor which actually made the old regime incapacitative was twofold. First, international pressure was common in all the revolutions. Whether you talk about American Revolution, it was fueled by France. And how was France fueled? By the Britishers. They were involved in British-French war was going on for 7 years. And so many international pressure was there. What about China? Japanese pressure. Okay. Okay. Russian Revolution because of German. In all these revolution, one thing is very much common, that is incapacitation of old regime. But why incapacitation? Because of two factors. One is international pressure, visible in all the four. Second was domestic revolt. International pressure was there. Other than international pressure, internal pressure was also there. And then only revolution could happen. So, sociologists are not studying French, Chinese, German, Russian. They are studying the phenomena of revolution. Why revolutions exist in society? What are those factors which lead to revolutions? And that is twofold. One is international pressures that emanate. Second is internal turmoil. These two factors contribute to revolutions in society. So, is she not speaking just like a sociologist? And she is a sociologist, by the way. Okay. He is also called as political scientist. Okay. There is no difference between political scientist and sociologist. Okay. Basically, her observation was this. This is state, any state, Chinese state, Russian state, French state, American state. All the states, according to her, why revolution happens. Okay. All the states face international pressure and internal turmoil also is going on from the peasant class. So it is both like push from upward and push from downward position as well. Compressed, state is compressed between two factors, international and domestic. And then only too much compression ultimately brings the revolution. Okay. And I'll also ask you guys to think over one question. Okay, this is your homework question basically. Just think over it. No need to submit this to me, just think over it. Why Indian nationalist movement is not called a revolution? Okay. Why don't we call Indian revolution? Okay, this is one question that you can think over. Think over. I'm not saying that there is one objective answer to this, but you can think over it. Sociology versus history is over. Okay. These 4 points are more than enough if you are able to write all these. Now, last topic of this unit, sociology versus economics. Sociology versus economics. You can write one concluding line in sociology versus history. One concluding line in sociology versus history. Sociology as a discipline evolved only as an outcome of sociology as a discipline evolved only as an outcome of sociology as a discipline evolved only as an outcome of or outcome to the great transformation period, the great transformation period in the history, in the history. Okay, full stop. History has been there since time immemorial. History has been there since time immemorial. And sociology is relatively very young discipline. Sociology is relatively very young discipline. However, sociology keeps meeting his father history. Sociology keeps meeting his father history. Sociology keeps meeting his father history. Whenever history, whenever history, whenever history lacks perspectives. Whenever history lacks perspectives. And this is what Philip, sorry, not Philip, this is what Charles Tilly, this is what Charles Tilly writes in his book As Sociology Meets History. In his book As Sociology Meets History. Okay. We have another branch in sociology called as historical sociology. Historical sociology. Okay. There is also one more branch, historical sociology. History studies about evolution of society. Historical sociology study about evolution of caste, evolution of family. Okay, how caste was used in those times. What is the function of caste today? Comparison. Caste in those times used to tell us your occupation. This was the function of caste, to tell us our occupation. Today, caste does not tell us our occupation. Today, caste is used to gain power in politics. The function of caste has changed, but caste is there. This is what the history of caste has been. Okay, caste has evolved. Okay, so this is what historical sociology is doing. Getting my point? But I won't going to detail of, क्योंकि ये सब आपको नोट्स में मिल जाएगा, इतना इसमें ज़्यादा माथा मारने की जरूरत ही नहीं है इन चीज़ों में, ठीक है? So let us now come to sociology versus history. Sociology versus economics. Very simple, straightforward, सीधा सीधा हिसाब है. Tell me one thing. Is economy part of society or is society part of economy? Is economy part of society or is society part of economy? बड़ा कौन है? एक तो बड़ा हो सकता, एक ही को बड़ा होना पड़ेगा, दो तो नहीं हो सकता. Economy part of society. हाँ, right. Economy is part of society. This is what we have been studying. See, you cannot say whether heart is part of body or body is part of heart. It's very easy. Heart is part of body. Sorry, क्या बोल दिया? Now this is Freudian slip. ये जो अभी हुआ मेरे साथ, Freudian slip. और फ्रॉइड बोले अनकॉन्शियस माइंड में ये सब चल रहा है, गंद वाला चीज है, ठीक है? एनी हाउ, so heart is part of body. Similarly, economy is part of society. But it is not so easy. There are, in economics, it is believed that economy is a separate organ. अलग चलता है वो. Is a separate organ. Economy is a separate organ. Okay, how? I'll tell you how. Market, according to the classical economist, and remember, whenever I'm differentiating between disciplines, I'm always talking about conventional differences. Conventional. Okay, they may not be absolutely true. Conventional they are. Conventionally they are. Market is separate entity. That means market is self-regulating. Market is self-regulating. Market regulates itself. Market does not need state to regulate it. Market is such a beautiful force, it will automatically regulate itself. अपने आप इन्फ्लेशन आएगा, अपने आप थोड़ा सा रिसेशन आएगा, थोड़ी सी अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट, अपने आप ही मार्केट स्टेबल हो जाएगी अपने आप, विदाउट एनी गवर्नमेंट का इंटरवेंशन. सेल्फ रेगुलेटिंग है. ओके, सपोज यू गाइस हैव स्टार्टेड बाइंग iPad Pro 2021 मॉडल, आउट ऑफ स्टॉक चले गया है. PlayStation 5, it has run out of stock. What will happen? Market is self-regulating. Automatically the cost of PlayStation 5 may increase in the coming times, or the black marketing of PlayStation 5 happens. Okay, or automatically black marketing of iPad Pro 2021 model may happen. Okay, so it is automatically happening without intervention of state. Automatically demand will decrease due to black marketing, and then price will again go down. Everything being regulated automatically. State की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ रही कहीं पे भी. Okay, market is self-regulating. Okay, therefore, write down, therefore market is disembedded. Market is disembedded from society. Remember this word, disembedded. Okay, I'll tell you why you have to remember this word. Disembedded from society. What does sociology suggest us? Sociology would tell us economy is not separate organ. Market is not self-regulating. Economy is only a part of larger society. Here economy. Sociology will tell us that ये जो economy अपने आप को इतना hero समझ रहा है, calling himself a separate organ altogether, it is simply just one part of my larger society. Okay, one part of larger society. And economy is not self-regulating. And economy is not self-regulating. Rather, economy is always regulated by political and social structures. Economy is always regulated by political and social structures. Political and social structures. Okay. Like for example, during lockdown, Indian state came up with this scheme, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. We had recession. Market could have self-regulated itself. Okay, it could have adjusted all the people who have gotten unemployed due to COVID lockdown. Market could not do so. State had to come. If we let market, okay, like this only, then everything will be in chaos. State had to come. Okay. Yes, Keynesian economics. State had to come. It had to intervene to stabilize the market. In 2008, a great subprime crisis happened world over. It started from America only. Okay, subprime crisis. It became very famous in 2008. And it was then decided that we just cannot let economies go on them by themselves. State would have to play a major role. Okay. And from then on, even RBI has become so active. We always come up with different schemes related to the kind of people we are giving loan out to. Okay, the different banks, they always maintain a profile now to minimize their NPAs. Okay, so that way, state is coming into the so-called self-regulated business. Okay, something that should be done by market only without any intervention of state. State would have to come in. Okay, to make sure that these people are not simply disbursing out loan to any random person. Regulation has to be there. Banking Regulation Act. Who is regulating banks? State is regulating banks. Okay. Okay. So one thing is very clear, economy is part of larger society. It means economy is embedded in society. It means economy is embedded in society. Economy is embedded in society. Okay. Now, let me give you some explanations. Okay. Second point, write down here in economy. Second point. According to classical economic model, according to classical economic model, the nature of man is Homo economicus. The nature of man is Homo economicus. स्पेलिंग क्या है इसकी? Homo economicus. This is what the nature of man is to an economist. If an economist wants to study man or society, obviously first he would have to develop model of man and model of society. Only then he can study on them. So to a classical economist, man's nature is highly economicus, Homo economicus. What is the meaning of this word? It simply means that all of us are utilitarian. We try to get maximum pleasure with minimum pain. All of us are self-centric individuals. Whatever we would do, that would simply gratify our own interest. Okay, this is what the classical notion of man is according to economists. Self-centric, money-chasing animal, every time, always, chasing money, always trying to make profit. The nature of man is this: self-centric individual, money-chasing animal, utilitarian. Agreed? Now, if man is utilitarian, always money chasing, self-centric individual, how do you explain all the services that we do without money in our everyday life? The concept of charity, the role of housewife, feminist economics, something that which again comes in. There is a branch called as feminist economics. Again, obviously, as a result of collision of feminism with economics, feminist economics branch got developed in the economics only. Okay. However, there are many things that you cannot explain just because you think that man is a self-centered individual, money-chasing animal. You would not be able to explain those things. The concept of donation, charity, man, people during the times of coronavirus, what happened? They started donating millions for Pradhan Mantri Fund. How would you explain this nature of man? How would you explain the concept of welfare state? If state is all about interest, money making, generating private profit, how do you explain the concept of welfare state? Basically, classical economics rests on this notion that market is self-regulated. Okay, that means capitalism will be the best model. Okay, without any state intervention. Secondly, man is Homo economicus. The nature of basic essence of man is profit-centric. Okay, and the basic model that would survive is capitalism. This is what the classical notion of man is, but it failed, miserably failed, especially after World War. Okay, I'm not going into the history of those things. Anyhow, so what will we write here? Man is utilitarian, self-seeking, and money-chasing animal. Okay. Utilitarian, self-seeking, money-chasing, and highly rational. Rational. Okay. Highly rational. This is what the notion of man is according to classical economics. Okay, third point. You can write down third point also in economics only. Then I will explain the second and third of sociology. Third point in economics. Economics largely study production and distribution of goods and services. Effective production and distribution of goods and services. Production and distribution of goods and services. And it tries to develop models. It tries to develop models. It tries to develop models through which resources can be allocated efficiently. Through which resources can be allocated efficiently. This is what largely economics do. Okay. It tries to develop models through which resources can be allocated efficiently. For this purpose, full stop के बाद, full stop, and then for this purpose, they often rely on mathematical models. For this purpose, they often rely on mathematical models. Mathematical models, equations, and statistics. Mathematical models, equations, or statistics. Okay. For example, law of demand. Law of demand. Okay. So economics, classical economics will run by certain models. There is a law of demand. Okay. What is law of demand? Law of demand is like more. Suppose you produce a good that is costing you approximately 20 rupees. Okay. It's very cheap. It's cheap, so you will buy it. If something is costly, you may not buy it. This is what the law of demand is. The more you buy cheaper goods, obviously the price of it will increase. Okay. Cheaper the good, more is the demand. Costlier the good, low is the demand. Okay. Law of demand. Cheaper the good, more demand. Costlier the good, low demand. This is what law of demand. ठीक है? More demand, priceless. Now, that way, economics is trying to explain to us that our economic behavior can be theorized very easily. If I am consuming something which is cheap, I am consuming it because it is cheap. Okay. If I am consuming something, if I'm not consuming something that is costly, because it is costly, that is why I'm not consuming. So it has reduced, the human behavior to a very rational, self-seeking, money-chasing, profit-centric, okay, or a rational being basically. Whatever he do, he would do according to these things. सस्ता है खरीद लो, महंगा है छोड़ो. Simple calculations. But this is not how it goes. I know iPhone is costlier than OnePlus. I also know that OnePlus has more features than iPhone. And still I'm buying iPhone. And this is known as Veblen good. Veblen goods violate the law of demand. Veblen goods violate the law of demand because these are not just goods, these are symbol of status. Okay. Some things are not just things, they are more than things, they are status goods. Veblen goods are status goods. Okay. You must have, I don't know how many of you have ever had such kind of friend who would call you late night at 10 p.m. Okay. At Taj Hotel. आजा ताज होटल है ताज होटल हाँ क्यों भाई आजा आजा मतलब जबरदस्ती कुछ भी शोशेबाजी show off every time show off at late night 10 p.m calling me to Taj Hotel. Okay. Or you must have seen in Bollywood movies people calling each other, at some big hotels or yacht. Okay, these are what are these? This is nothing but status goods. These are status goods. You display your status. Man is highly conscious about his status. Economists cannot, because you see, economics cannot study status mathematically. Can they ever make a graph of status? Status cannot be computed. It cannot be measured. And economics are crazy about numbers, economists. They always want something in numbers. Poverty has to be, around 30 rupees per this head count ratio has to be there. You can't talk about status. No, status we cannot calculate. What is this nonsense status? So to them, man is just a rational, utilitarian, self-interest, money-chasing animal. Nothing else. So, and Veblen, who was Veblen? He was both economist and sociologist. He has written one book on sociology separately. Okay. Just to explain the violation of law of demand. There he gets engaged in the real human behavior and talks about status goods. Okay. And this this is known as nothing but conspicuous consumption. Conspicuous consumption. When we violate law of demand, purchase something that seems unaffordable, still we are doing it despite it being very costly, forgetting about law of demand. This is nothing but conspicuous consumption. Conspicuous means visible. You make your consumption visible every time. You would go to restaurant with your friend, waiter would come, sir, mineral water or ordinary water? Mineral. This is what happens with your friends. You would say, see, if I'm not saying, see, with your friends, obviously say, ordinary pani leke aao, hame malum hai tumhara. But if you go out with someone who's very new, mineral water. Always conscious about our status. What would the other person think if I say ordinary water? He would say does not even keep proper care of his hygiene or sanitation, nothing. Okay. So this is what man is. He knows mineral water would cost him a lot, 100 rupees at least. Still he will buy it. So man is not really rational. Rationality is bounded. The concept is known as bounded rationality. Bounded rationality. Bounded rationality. That means rationality is bounded by social context and circumstances. Rationality cannot be running in isolation to all other variables. Social context has to be taken into consideration. This is what bounded rationality is. Okay. Now one more example, last example. With this, I'll be closing this topic also. Economics tell us that man is a rational being, utilitarian being. Market is highly self-regulating. Laissez-faire we have. Okay, Adam Smith notion. Okay, everything is freely available in the market. Whenever you would want to come, there is no boundary as such. If you have money, you can buy it. If you don't have, you do not have. Everything is so fair enough in the market. Economics cannot explain that if occupations are decided purely by merit, purely by our virtue, then how come certain caste groups are found in certain occupations only? How come economics cannot explain why you need air hostesses female? Economics can tell us that for the operation of aeroplane, we need this much of cost. Okay, we need this much million of investment. But it will not be telling about occupation structure. Why this particular occupation is hoarded by a female, these occupations hoarded by male. Why is it that more often than not pilots are male? Okay, what actually made what actually prevented that air hostess to become pilot? Okay, so economics will tell about superstructure mainly. I mean, not the Marxian superstructure, larger. So in the sense, very numerical detail, investment, profit, okay, models, laws, statistics. He would not be talking about the inner built of those things. Economics cannot tell us if market is self-regulating, man is rational, self-utilitarian, okay, thinking about himself. Why do we have menial labor till date hoarded by Dalits? Okay, so there are many things which economics cannot explain. The larger history and the social context of the society would explain those things. Okay, you know, to an economist, if I ask one question, what is the origin of capitalism? Economists will tell the origin of capitalism lies in rejection to mercantilism. Capitalism opened the world to trade. We got so much money, import export happened. Okay, some merchant class developed into the super bourgeoisie class. They owned the means of production, employed so many people, produced in mass through factories. People got employed. This is what capitalism is. Now the market is free. Whoever wants to come gain employment. Okay, and you get salary for that. This is what capitalism is, right? So, the origin of capitalism to an economics is nothing but lies in economic operations only. But Max Weber once said, man is not money chasing by nature. Man is not money chasing by nature. Economics cannot tell us that the origin of capitalism lies in religion. It was actually, if you guys know, and if you do not know, I'll explain you, because anyhow, one day I'll have to explain that scholar to you. This is very surprising fact, you may not have heard it ever, that this capitalism, industrial revolution that all of us now know very well, was actually the result of Protestants. Industrial revolution in those times, if you have ever noticed this thing, 70% of the people involved in industrial revolution, whether it was industrialist, or the managers, staff, bankers, employees, most of them were Protestants. Protestants. There is something very special about the ethics of Protestantism, which actually led to the rise of capitalism. And this is the line of Max Weber. Max Weber is regarded as one of the most important scholars amongst the social sciences because he is the first scholar to have ever traced the origin of economic system to religion. Something is innate about Protestants people that they gave rise to capitalism. Now, this is something that people may not be aware of. Do you know one line? You must have heard a lot about this line. Time is money. You must have heard a lot about this line. Time is money. But do you know who coined this phrase? Benjamin Franklin, American scientist but Protestant. Time is money. There was a point of time when we used to pass our time. Today we spend our time. Time has become money. The idea of timetable, something that we take for granted today. Okay. When we were kids in school, we always used to see these thoughts. Work is worship. Do you know who gave this line? Work is worship. We used to read these two lines always. Work is worship, time is money. Again, Benjamin Franklin, Protestant. If you know that time is money and work is worship, I'm just giving you one small hint. Don't you think industrial revolution will happen? And mass production will definitely happen, and people will get more and more opportunity to work because they now love work. Work is worship to them, and time is money to them. And if time is money to them, they are not working for money. Money is simply an outcome of their work, which to them is a worship. And if you do work religiously, and if you do not think about money that you are going to get, then your prosperity is not the result of your self-seeking, money-chasing human nature that economists call as. It is the result of the kind of spiritual ethics that you have in you. Capitalism was the result of Protestant ethics. This is something that I will explain to you later on. Okay, so this was all about economics and sociology. Okay, now we are done with unit 1 finally. Okay, congratulations to all of you. This is the usual time it takes, but this time around I actually took less time for unit 1. Okay, I think we may even end up finishing the syllabus before 30th September. Okay, so the next target, as I already told you, is unit 2. Unit 2 is very important. Remember one thing, I'm giving you data about last year paper, sociology, means, okay. In last year, civil service means 2020, sociology paper. As you know, that paper is divided into two parts. One is paper 1, second is paper 2. Paper 1 is of 250 marks. Paper 2 is also of 250 marks. Right now we are reading paper 1. In paper 1, out of 250, 140 marks came from only one, see, bigger chunk, 140 out of 250 came only from unit 4. सिर्फ एक यूनिट से 140 marks out of 250. Okay, I'm not saying nothing came from other units. See, generally what happens, you will come across a unit on religion, on politics. Those will be repetitive more often than not. You will again have to read Durkheim on religion, Weber on religion, in the chapter on religion, which anyhow you would have to read when you would read Durkheim and Weber. Okay, so that's how I'm saying unit 4, 140 marks. Unit 1 and 2 collectively was approximately 40 marks. 1 and 2. Okay, but unit 1 and 2 are very important. It will help you establish foundation. Once you have built foundation, then only you can understand unit 4. If you do not understand unit 1 and 2, you cannot understand unit 4. Trust me, there are many people here who start directly with unit 4. भगवान जाने क्या पढ़ते हैं, क्या पढ़ाते होंगे, ठीक है? But you cannot have unit 1 and 2. You cannot ignore these two units. Okay. So now any question if you want to ask? Earlier we said individualism exists, but individual does not. How are these two different? No. Sheetal Rana. See, when I say that individuals do not exist, okay, what I want to say at that point of time is more important, because I wanted to establish the difference between sociology and psychology. That is why I said individuals do not exist. If I am speaking about, speaking like this, individuals do not exist, while talking about difference between sociology and economics, it won't make sense. But when I am talking about difference between sociology and sociology and psychology, obviously then it would make sense, because when I said individual do not exist, I wanted to emphasize on why. Because only roles exist. Okay, we are always in social roles. And every role comes with certain expectations. Role of teacher has certain expectations. Okay, students would expect teacher to behave in a certain fashion. Okay. Similarly, I would expect mother to behave in a certain fashion. She is in the role of mother. Okay. So all of us have certain expectations related to roles. That way, role is not, individual does not exist. Only roles exist. That means social expectations you always would have to conform to. You would always have to live up to those expectations. So how can you say you are individual? No. Can we write martial aid, Shubhangi? Shubhangi, martial aid, yes, you can write, but in fact, very good question. Let me also tell the people about martial aid and how can we write if we want to write this. Do you guys know? I told you once upon a time, even if Communist Party of India decides to rule over India, or so not decides, even if it gains power, still it would have to succumb to the structure, larger structure. It would not be able to, implement land reforms the way it wants to. It would not be able to implement or increase the minimum wage or working conditions, because too much of favor towards worker and peasants will automatically lead to capital flight. Companies will go away from India. They will start looking for cheap labor. They will go to Jakarta, Indonesia, okay, wherever they can find cheap labor. In India, cheap labor is no more cheap, because Indian state has now started talking about labor reforms, land reforms, increasing minimum wage. Why should we stay here? Okay. In that context, what will India do if these people go away? India is ruled by Communist Party of India. The second step would be to take loan from World Bank, IMF, to govern India. But do you know that IMF and World Bank do not give you loan unless you liberalize your economy? That means your economy has to be favorable to the capitalist class. If your economy is not favorable to the capitalist class, they will never lend you money, assistance, aid, whatever you may call it. Okay. Okay. What is interpretative discipline? नूतन चौरसिया, अभी मैंने नहीं पढ़ा है interpretative discipline. Okay. Interpretative discipline is all about Max Weber, social action theory. Acha, remember one thing. If any one of you is confused between social action, structural functional Marxism, no need to worry at all. Because these are those things which we teach in Unit 2. Okay, Unit 1 is simply an introduction. You just have to listen to the words. Okay, you just have to know certain words and certain keywords. Actual detail is going to be there in Unit 2 about Marxism, structural functionalism, social action. Okay, so don't need to worry about it. Bikram Mandal. How patriarchy shows high degree of intimacy in Gemeinschaft. Okay, Bikram. Patriarchy does not show high degree of intimacy. Because of patriarchy, there is high degree of intimacy. In the sense, intimacy does not mean love. Intimacy means connection. If you know, in those times, village times, okay, or in rural India or feudal era of France, we had joint family systems largely. Since occupation was primarily agrarian, so multiple people were involved, okay, in agrarian occupations. They had one family, one household, and one leader in each family. Okay. When you have joint family system governed by patriarchy, all the people have very strong sense of cooperation with each other. Females would not be raising their voice because they are happy with the fact that they are not going to get any property. There is no concept of women empowerment. There is no concept of feminism. So they would not be raising their voice. Everything is normal to them. Patriarchy is not something which should be challenged against. It is a normal norm. This is what the kind of thinking we had in those times. So that's how patriarchy used to maintain the order as it is. The moment feminism erupted, everything got destroyed. Okay. Pranshu, sir, has the focus on individual become too much? Pranshu, this is very philosophical question. You can call me. We can discuss these things. Okay. Out of interest, I can easily see this question is coming out of interest in these things. Okay. But ध्यान रखना, इंटरेस्ट डेवलप नहीं करना है, आप मुझे फोन कर लेना. I'll explain whether we have increased level of individualism. Don't you think our societies are facing crisis every day? Okay, that means that order, whatever August Comte talked about, is not really anywhere near around us. Okay, I don't know or what exactly that order consists of. When will society get back to normal order? Israel-Palestine has been fighting since forever. When will order come? Nobody knows. But individualism, yes, definitely it is there. The concept of family, if you guys know, is weakening now. Weakening. Few years back, the concept of live-in, which is very new to India, it came in. But today we do not talk about live-in relationship. Today we talk about living apart together. Example, Tina Dabi, Athar Amir. Tina Dabi, Athar Amir. They lived together but apart. Just like you guys, if you guys get married to IAS officer or IPS officer, whether male or female, okay, and you are also IAS or IPS, what would happen? You guys would be living apart together, and this is not something limited to bureaucracy. This has become very normal norm now. You guys are together but living apart, and this is very Western notion. Generally, in the concept of family, you do not have people living apart. You have living people in. You have people living in under one roof. Okay, but living apart together is very Western. I'll explain all these things. Basically, what I wanted to say is the concept of family is weakening. People are getting married at very late age now. लोग ऐसे बोलेंगे भाई 22 के हो गए शादी कब करोगे? ठीक है, 25 के हो गए शादी कब करोगे? 26 के हो गए शादी कब करोगे? लड़कियों को भी यही 22 हो गए अब शादी कर लो. Okay, but delayed marriage has become a new norm because every one of us have become ambitious. It is our individual right to see ourselves wherever we want to, whether in bureaucracy, whether in university. It is our individual aspiration. We are not longer concerned about families, norms, restrictions, lineage कि नहीं अब तो बच्चा हो जाना चाहिए था अब तक तो ये वो सब बकवास. Sir, has the focus on individual become हो गया Keegan? Sir, comparison between anthro and political science? Keegan? अच्छा, oh, sociology versus anthro and sociology versus political science is not so important, Keegan. Although it's very easy, but I don't want to take another half hour or 1 hour because the fact is you would not find any question on sociology versus political science. Not even a single question. Okay. That does not mean that UPSC cannot ask in the future. Yes, it can. But why to take so much of hard work? Okay, I will suggest you to read. If you are interested in reading sociology versus political science, you can simply read that one page from NCERT class 11. Okay, and same for sociology and anthropology. Simply, I'll explain you. Anthropology is nothing but study of simple societies. Okay, tribal societies, pre-modern society, and sociology is more about study of modern industrialized societies, societies which came after French and Industrial Revolution. Okay, this is very basic difference. If you want to understand more, you can refer NCERT class 11. Okay, but do not go into the details of these things. Adula Dharmateja, difference between common sense and psychology. Psychology studies cognition, id, ego, superego, dreams, your dreams. Psychologists will hypnotize you. Where is the common sense here? Common sense is lost if when you are hypnotized. Do you know, whatever we do, what I am doing right now is my conscious being. My unconscious is hidden somewhere. I don't want that unconscious to come out here. It is hidden. This is what Freud would talk about me. This is how Freud would say anything about me. Okay. How to reveal that unconscious Nishat or unconscious Adarsh or unconscious Riya or unconscious Abdullah Dharm. All these unconscious selves can come out if they are hypnotized, then if they are let free in free association, if they're asked to speak whatever comes to their mind without any restriction, prohibition, thinking about environment. And then finally, if we start analyzing their dreams, what kind of dreams they see in their everyday night, okay, then the real unconscious would come. So common sense is lost everywhere. No role of common sense. Psychologists are not studying common sense. They are studying mind of individual, which is something very different. Okay. Okay. 5 new. Okay, Shubham, they think capitalist class bring their investment back. Vikram, thank you, sir. Mehul Purohit, sir, why it is said that history is past, sociology and sociology is present history? It's very simple. History is past sociology. When I talked about history, French Revolution, was I not talking about order, disorder, occupancy or dominance of politics, state? You would see bits and pieces of sociological theories and perspectives. Okay, bourgeois revolution, revisionist. No, it was not bourgeois revolution. Conspiracy of intellectuals. You would have started, or you would have already gotten introduced to by then multiple perspectives. Sociology is therefore past history. Okay, history is therefore past sociology, and sociology is present history. So as I told you that we have a branch called as historical sociology, which deals with evolution of caste, evolution of family, comparison. So this is what the general idea is. Okay, we keep talking about what the function of caste was in those times and how caste has evolved as a structure in the present times. So this is nothing but comparative method employed to study the same phenomena that is caste, and therefore, sociology is present history. Okay, but don't go by these cheap lines. Okay, these are very cheap lines. सांगवान तो नहीं पढ़ रहे हो? Shivam, how rejection to mercantilism is? How rejection to mercantilism is what? Acha, how rejection to mercantilism is the origin to capitalism? This is very basic thing, Shivam. Industrial capitalism, the rise of industrial class. What is mercantilism? Mercantilism did not open the opportunities for trade. It was all about taxes. अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन अगर आप पढ़ोगे, मर्केंटलिज्म बहुत बड़ा कॉज था अमेरिकन इकोनॉमी की ग्रोथ ना होने के पीछे. ओके, ट्रेड के लिए ओपन ही नहीं थे वो लोग. कैपिटलिज्म जैसे ही ट्रेड ओपन हुआ, कैपिटलिज्म शुरू हुआ. ओके, इंडस्ट्री. ओके, ये तो बेसिक है एकदम. चलो, एनी अदर क्वेश्चन? Any other question? Shivam Garg, thank you. Okay, chalo. Bye bye. And yes, you will get the notes most probably by tomorrow morning because some technical issue is going on. Okay, we are working on the portal also. So tomorrow morning by 9 or 10 a.m. you will get all the notes. Unit 1. Okay. Happy weekend.